Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and right this very second I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Michelle Moan and Douglas Barrowman of the Terrace get together? Oh, that's right. You are going to give us a lot of money and Shaughan and I are going to spend it indiscriminately. And we don't have to tell you what we're going to do with it.
You know, don't get me wrong. There's a lot to take in about that interview, but the lower end of his shirt, the lower end of his shirt was really struggling. Listen, they're getting a lot of money, and that's not good. However, he needed a bigger shirt. There's no getting away from that.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's some of that PPE they spent could have extended to getting him a shirt that actually fit him. Can you imagine that, having all the money in the world, more money than you know what to do with, and you can't get a shirt that fits you? Your horrible big fat swag of a gut pushing through like a nosy neighbour at the curtains.
I mean, he could get a shirt that fits him, but it would involve buying an XXL. That's all he has to do.
It's like, listen, Douglas Barrowman, if you're listening, dress for the body you have, not the body you want. And if you're a big tubby boy, just wear big tubby boy shirts. It's fine. Honestly, I mean, that's one of the funniest things. That's perhaps the most embarrassing thing that's come out of this interview. Not the fact that Barrowman and Moan's reputation is absolute tatters. The fact that his big guts protruding through his ill-fitting shirt.
I haven't listened to a single word they've said. I've only seen like images of the interview, and I was like, oh my goodness, that shirt does not fit him. That's the thing that's got me.
The interview is very funny just because they've completely misjudged the mood, and it hasn't their quote unquote fight back. They haven't really fought back anything. But I can't remember the guy's name. Sort of was a health minister at the time who dug out text messages to like say, "Aha, no, they were talking about PP MedPro. They were involved." And then Michelle Moan comes back and says, "I thought your phone had you deleted all the text messages. You were standing at the COVID inquiry." It's something like that. The ruthlessness at which these people will turn on each other. There are no honour amongst thieves. It's very, 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 very funny.
Well, listen, I hope her husband gets to buy bigger shirts soon.
Bigger shirts, bigger yachts. Do you think they'll be made to give that money back? Nah.
No, I can't imagine anything happening whatsoever.
Nah, isn't it? You kind of go back to like when I was growing up, when politicians or people in power did something bad, there was always consequences. This doesn't seem to be the case anymore. You read about all these conservatives that are like done for some pretty serious stuff. You just say, "Oh well," that's such a bad attitude. Just saying, "Oh well," and then just sort of turn away from it all. It's really, really bad. It's probably a sign of the times.
Yeah, nothing bad happens. But here we are.
Here we are now. Shaughan and I can do maybe Shaughan. This is our gateway into doing a satirical show. If Ian Hislop and Paul Merton ever left, have I got news for you? We could bring you and I on. You know, bit of politics, bit of laughs, bit of satire.
I actually watched that for the first time in a long time on Friday, and maybe chuckled approximately 6 times. I actually thought it was okay.
Do you remember the episode they did with Angus Deaton after the stuff about the prostitutes and cocaine came out?
I watched it, but I actually found it quite uncomfortable.
He was decimated in a funny way. In a funny way, he was absolutely decimated.
But it was very, very awkward.
He was in 1 Foot in the Grave, and he was also in Nighty Night. I don't know if you ever saw Nighty Night.
I did not watch Nighty Night. I did watch 1 Foot in the Grave.
Nighty Night's hilarious. Nighty Night's probably the blackest comedy that's ever been made. Very, very funny. If anyone's listening and has seen Nighty Night, they'll know exactly what I mean. It's about a woman who's like, her husband is like found out that he's recovered from cancer, but she falls in love with a new neighbour that's moved in, and so pretends that the husband's dying, tells the husband that he's dying, starts making him wear nappies, and then tries to seduce the husband, played by Angus Deaton. And Angus Deaton's wife's got multiple sclerosis, and she does stuff to upset and exacerbate the woman's MS. Honestly, you've got your head in your hands talking about it. It's so funny. It's such a funny show, man.
Better than Baddiel Syndrome.
Man, Baddiel Syndrome. Baddiel Syndrome. I found out all I need to know about the Israel-Palestine conflict thanks to Baddiel Syndrome. So thank you very much for that, David Baddiel. David Baddiel's such a twat, isn't he? Podcast is patented. Please report anyone you know who's doing something similar, because it's theft. And if this podcast rips us off, and ultimately you're taking food out of the mouths of our children. And that's no one wants to do that, particularly at this time of year. But Shaughan,
I mean, neither of us have children, to be fair.
yeah, but the listeners don't need to know that. You know, what I do in my personal life is absolutely none of the people do it. I could have loads of kids. I just choose not to talk about them. I'm like Boris Johnson. You know, can't remember. I'm very shifty. Can't quite put my finger on how many kids I've got.
So you can't remember the fact that you have none?
I've got so many children, I've got none. That's it. Just like our erstwhile Prime Minister. But before we get going, Shaughan, I suppose worth asking is Christmas is just around the corner. We're recording this on the 20th of December. Are you in the festive spirit?
You know, son, I wouldn't say I was that much of a Christmassy person.
Oh.
I mean, I'm not anti-Christmas, but I wouldn't say I was like totally geared up and excited about it.
No, I'm so sorry to hear that.
That's okay. Are you?
Not really. No. I was trying to think of the thing that I'm most looking forward to is EastEnders Christmas special. I'm really annoyed that it's going on at 10:15 at night. That's too late for me. It should be on at 8 o'clock in the evening. But that's nevertheless, I'm not in charge. I mean, let's be honest, A View from the Terrace should be on at 10 o'clock just after the Championship football. So I'm not responsible for scheduling at BBC. But if I was, EastEnders Christmas special, 8 o'clock, A View from the Terrace on at 10 o'clock on the Fridays. But no, I'm very much looking forward to that. And it's my niece's third Christmas. So she's got a wee bit of a personality now. So it's good to hang out with her.
And have you bought her good presents, and will you be wrapping them in silver foil?
I used to wrap stuff in tin foil, but it's expensive and not good for the environment.
Well, which says you wrap them well in tin foil. Like, you seem to be good at wrapping.
It's hard to wrap them poorly in tin foil. You know, I mean, the tin foil, it really does what you want it to. You know, it really does what you want it to. So you don't need to worry about that. But so I'm EastEnders. I think I'm most looking forward to. Obviously, time with the family, but I choose not to drink in Christmas. It's just a thing. I'm not adverse to. I'm not. I mean, as you'll know better than anyone else, Shaughan. I'm not adverse to saying no to a glass of beer. But I don't drink at Christmas. Just as easier to just drive around, and you're your own destiny, in charge of your own destiny. If you don't do that.
Well, that's good. That's good. That sounds very sensible. Are you going to your mother's for Christmas Day?
Yes, I will go there for my dinner, and then go to my dad's on Boxing Day. I think my gran is coming down from Kilmarnock, so it'll be good to spend some time with her. So yeah, but I think most of the time it'll be alone. I'll just and my thoughts might start reading a book. Oh, you find that funny, Shaughan?
You might start reading a book.
Yeah, I'll probably get a book for Christmas. So I've got into a bad habit. I don't do as much now. But I used to just buy books and stick them in my bookshelf and never read them.
That is a bad habit. Yeah. Duncan Mackay would not get in that habit.
No, Duncan Mackay would. He just reads. Duncan Mackay would buy the book and read it. Effectively, that's ultimately what you're saying.
That man can read.
That man can read the shit out of a book. He could read the shit out of a book. But nevertheless, Shaughan, we've been talking. Boy, Josh Thompson, that Mark Dundee United fan, he'll be raging with this. We've been talking for 9 minutes and we haven't actually got to the point. Well, Joshy boy, you are in luck. Now, bit of scene setting. First of all, Shaughan, on last week's show, I complained about some of the cheek and the lip I was getting from Dundee United supporters on social media. This was, of course, after the Wraith Rovers and Partick Thistle game. I was thoroughly entertained by a Wraith Rovers attacker called Dylan Easton. And his performance in that match was so impressive that I was moved to share my thoughts about him on social media. And I said that he's the best player outside the Scottish top flight. Now, a number of Dundee United supporters got in touch with me to let me know that I was talking shit, including one called Ian Bone. Ian Bone decided to get in touch. And he wrote, nearly 30 years old who has spent his career in the Seaside Leagues. Settle, mate. Well, Ian, much like Fraser, you're left with scrambled egg all over your face because Dylan Easton scored one of the goals of the season 8 days later as the Rovers beat United 1-0 at Tannadice. This is the biggest game of the weekend, probably the biggest game in the SPFL so far this season, and it leaves Wraith Rovers 5 points clear at the top of the table, albeit having played a game more than United, but it feels as though the momentum is well and truly with Rovers. That's 10 games unbeaten, 8 wins and 2 draws, and you've won your last 5 matches, and you are standing there with a massive big grin on your face. Shaughan, what on What on earth is happening at Starks Park?
So we see on Saturday that felt like such an important game. It felt like a vital game. And bear in mind, it's like the second tier in December. That doesn't happen very often. But the fact that they felt like such a sense of occasion, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like when I was walking up to Tannadice, when we were walking up to Tannadice, Wraith Rovers had laid on 12 free buses. And suddenly this kind of convoy of buses started going past us, full of Rovers fans. Although disappointingly, there was a chap in the window, and I kind of heard a chap and I turned around and it was like somebody who was maybe about 12, just flipped me the finger. And I was like, well, that's...
the price of fame.
Yes, that's both simple and effective. But regardless, it just felt important. And you get to Tannadice, you go around the corner to the turnstiles, the away turnstiles. There's maybe 500 people trying to get in. They all have like blue Santa hats on. So basically, the club.
You were wearing one as well.
So the club had created. So not only they laid on free buses, they laid on free Santa hats. But it was weird because I don't know if it was to do with like the material they were made with or the stitching or whatever. But it was quite hard for you couldn't really wear it with the hat down. So basically, it was like, I don't know, 1,500 Rovers fans wearing blue Santa hats that were totally erect for like the entire period of the game. But you come around the corner, you see that, then you see a Wraith Rovers fan, and it kind of felt like this had been a conversation in a pub that had got out of hand. So there was a Rovers fan that was dressed up as Old Father Time. And he had the beard, he had the it was like a kind of cloak, I suppose. And he had a homemade, I think it's a scythe, it would have been. Yeah. But written on the scythe was, rather than Old Father Time, it was Old Father Injury Time. I was like, well, you've really went the extra yard here. Fair play to you. There's footage of, I don't know if you've seen it, because there was two cameras on the Rovers fans. And you know the one where just when they're about to score,
brilliant! It's the boys at the front. There's who's swaying, and you can see his thighs and his knees. It's like the Rovers content over the past couple of days was brilliant. That was one of my favourite videos. The two, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So you're right. There's a sway amongst the young boys at the front because you're like, well, and I'm like, well, why are they swaying? Is it like because they're trying to get a better look, or is it just they're swaying in time with Dylan Eason? I'm not entirely sure. But there is, like, you can kind of see Old Father Injury Time behind their shoulders on the left-hand side. Aye, you can just about see him.
That back.
You can just about see him, but it was all very good. But just in terms of the entire day, I don't think I've been so excited about a Wraith Rovers league game in a long time. And it was entirely justified. And I know there's been a lot written about the away support, like they took 1,800 fans and they sold out the stand. But Dundee United as well. The Dundee United fans as well deserve a lot of praise. 8,500 Dundee United fans. That's class.
100%. And that's something that I noticed when the Wraith Rovers highlights, excellent as usual. Really good idea how the game went. Didn't look like a fantastic game. We'll come on and talk about that shortly. But when they filmed the players coming out and you see that stand behind the goal full of Dundee United supporters with the flags, it really did look like something off the continent. It looked like something from like a sort of, this isn't a criticism, but like a mid-tier Italian game in Serie A, where you see that those sort of flags and there's all that noise and all that colour, and obviously the tangerine, such a very distinctive colour. It's like, wow, this looks, and when the camera moves along and you just see all the other stands that are absolutely jam-packed full of people, it felt like this is a really big game.
Yeah, and you don't get that. Well, I've not found it often. Maybe other teams do or other fans do of other clubs, but it's not something that comes along that often for a Wraith Rovers fan in lower league Scottish football. The fact that you're involved in a kind of sense of theatre, I suppose, in terms of a big game in the Scottish second tier. But, and again, I'm not always too keen on teams coming out to music, but they came out to... It was Fucking in the Bushes by Oasis. But it just felt like, maybe they come out to that every week. I've no idea. Presumably they do. But just it all felt very, very good. But you're right. And certainly in terms of first half, as much as it was a big build-up, certainly the first half was not great, I suppose. But the second half was decent. What I would say about the entire game was it was tense. I'm not entirely sure that either team played to how well they could, but it felt fairly significant in terms of a result, I suppose.
Well, I suppose we might as well just cut it. Just let's get to the goal. It's one of the goals of the season. It's an absolutely beautiful goal, and it's beautiful from start to finish. Like, I've watched it back about 9 or 10 times to appreciate it. The pass in from Sam Stanton, about a 30-yard reverse pass to play Dylan Easton, and when he gets the ball, he's going away from goal. It's like Declan Gallagher comes over to basically marshal him away from goal. All of a sudden, like, Easton sort of swivels and stands him up. I think it's like, is it Scott McMahon that comes over to sort of give him a hand? He gets left behind. Craig Sibbald comes over to give him a hand. And then just before it's too late, when he sort of takes the ball, he's making the space for himself to shoot. Jordan Tilson sort of comes over. Wee bit too late, because as soon as Tilson comes over, the ball's off Easton's foot into the net. And when Easton runs away to celebrate, it's amazing. But there's a bit where Tilson seems to scream, "How?" Like, you know, that sort of like the ball's in the back of the net. He's in this thing where he's sort of like his hands at his side, and he just sort of comes in like, "How?" And I suppose that just sums it up. Like, one, I mean, it's an amazing goal. Easton's having an amazing season, and that has been the apex of the season so far. Scoring the winning goal in as big a game as that, and such a good goal. But the same token for Dundee United, how can a player get past 3 players inside the penalty box?
I mean, there's a point where, like, Alan Temple made this point on Twitter during the week, and the point where Dylan Easton picks the ball up. I mean, he's so far wide.
Yeah.
And he has his back to goal, and there's so many players between him and the goal. It's like, how on earth can he score from here? And I get it in terms of he's got his Dundee United's reporting hat on. And yes, there are, I suppose, deficiencies from a defensive perspective. But the reason that he was able to score from there is because he's just an outrageously good footballer.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he was able to slalom away from 3 defenders. As soon as it left his foot, I was up. Like, even though I didn't have the best angle of it, I was like, that's in. Like, I just knew as soon as he hit it, and the way it curled round Walton, it was just a fantastic, fantastic goal. And it was a weird game. Like, not much happened in the first half. I was surprised by Dundee United in terms of how they approached the game. The second half was certainly more even, but odd game in terms of how it panned out. And I think the Rovers fans that were there, that's now 2 games that I've watched them against Dundee United. I don't think there's much between the teams, certainly in terms of an attacking sense. Defensively, I think United are a good bit better. In terms of going forward, I'm not quite so sure, to be honest.
I think the things that I noticed in the game, it's perhaps I was mostly paying attention to the chances. It's quite difficult to get an idea of the pattern of play, but what I read online was that it did seem quite a cagey game that was really only lit up by like one incredible moment. Like, United had a couple of chances. They had a shot, I think it's Chris Mockery had a shot. Actually, Dabrowski made a really good save from it, pushed it past the post. I think it was Molt might have had a header. Yep. Molt had the shot from distance. Mockery had a header, etc. But the bit where, like, Dabrowski has come under a bit of criticism from himself, I think from Andy Harrow as well, was a bit that sort of not long after the goal, he came out for a cross and just completely whiffed at it. And it sort of goes to the back post and was cleared. At those moments, I mean, you must have had a pretty good view of that. What was that like when you're coming under a degree of pressure and your goalkeeper does something like that?
In fairness, you're right. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So I was like, oh, geez, oh. But that seemed to be Dundee United's main approach to the game. Like, get deliveries into the box. So they've done it over and over and over again. I was a wee bit disappointed in terms of how they played in general. So they went direct. So Louis Moult, I felt Louis Moult was quite isolated. Then it was a case of, can Glenn Middleton get involved? Can Kai Fotheringham get involved? And bear in mind, I think both of them have had like reasonably good seasons so far.
Yeah, why would you need to go direct if you've got players like that? If you get the ball, that's the whole point of Moult is like, hit the byline, get those guys to hit the byline, get balls in, because Moult's like one of the best like penalty boxes, that like strong and aggressive in there. That surely that's what you would think you would look to do.
I just didn't think United played a lot of football in terms of through the lines. In terms of passed it through the middle, I don't think they created anything. So Middleton was reasonably quiet. Kai Fotheringham was reasonably quiet. They got a lot of deliveries in, or a number of deliveries in. But to be fair, I thought Ewan Murray and Scott Brown dealt with it reasonably well. Chris Mockery wasn't really involved. Sibbald done okay, but again, in terms of passing through lines, it didn't do it. And whether that's by accident or design, I'm not sure. Maybe they thought the fact that Raith Rovers have Scott Brown, who is essentially a central midfielder playing at centre half, we can need to put him under pressure early and often, but it didn't really work. So every time that Moult had a kind of a wee kind of chance of kind of shooting a goal, he was outside the boxes, maybe like 25, 30 yards for goal. So Dabrowski had 2 good saves, but at the same time, he's 6'5", and both saves I expected him to make. So I was reasonably surprised at not how poor United were, because I think over the piece, for both games actually, at Starts Park and at Tannadice, if I was a United fan, I'd be arguing that United were the better team. However, Raith Rovers have kept them at arm's length. They didn't really cough up any good chances. And Moult, like 25 yards, that's where you'd want him to be.
Yeah.
I suppose he is as a forward who hasn't scored much recently, so maybe he's a wee bit low on confidence. I'm not entirely sure. And again, that kind of feeds into this whole thing where United don't have strength and depth, I suppose.
That's an interesting point. But before we come on and sort of look at United, we'll take a bit of a broader view at them. If Dylan Easton's goal was the best thing that happened in the box, away from the Raith Rovers fans, Ross Millen's tackle inside the box where you were close to must have been the best thing that happened in that entire match. That was to see something like that happen in injury time must have been incredible.
Ross Millen just loves celebrating. It's as simple as that. It was pointed out on the Oh No 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 podcast, which is a Raith Rovers podcast, that they can't remember him actually being booked for a foul. So everything's been booked for...
He's like taking it over exuberance.
He's just booked for having a laugh, basically. But I'm not entirely sure if it was for that move, but he'd given the ball away at one point. It was quite a slack pass. It might have been that move. I'm not entirely sure, but regardless, you always expected Dundee United to have one chance. They're going to have one good chance in the last 5-10 minutes, and then here's Louis Moult advancing on goal. Here it is. But Millen's challenge was, it was absolutely perfect. His kind of timing, the way he kind of dispossessed him. I think it also summed up Moult. The fact he looked a wee bit low in confidence, I suppose. Like maybe he took an extra touch, I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, Millen's challenge and his celebration, and I'll be honest, I jumped up and absolutely punched the air. Like, I celebrated it like it was a goal. But I also expected it from Millen, who just loves celebrating. The only thing I was a wee bit surprised is they didn't start stripping him off like he did at Queen's Park. A man who just loves celebrating and taking off his clothes.
Sorry, it's a strange feeling, like having been at the football, watching my own team like grind out an early 1-0 win against one of the league favourites. Like, after the match, my thighs were sore. You know that way when you're, but you know, do you know that way when you're standing? It's just you're just tense. You're sort of standing almost like a squat position. Every time the ball sort of goes into your half, into your final third, you're sort of like, oh God, please just get this ball away. Do you know what I mean? Have you felt like that before?
It wasn't. So probably the first half was where Dundee United were on top, but again, didn't really create very much. And then as soon as we scored, I was like, right, class. And we've been the best team for the first 15 minutes or so for the second half. I was like, right, this is going to be a long, long half hour. It wasn't really. Like, I didn't think that, like, Dundee United weren't really eking out chances, or Dabrowski wasn't really having to claim anything or make saves. It was reasonably comfortable. Yes, so I think there was a corner, I remember, like the very, very last minute that was glanced wide, but again, it was a difficult chance. So no, as much as I was tense, I thought it was absolutely fine. And like, it's interesting now. So I thought going into this game, I was thinking to myself, right, in terms of 90 minutes, Dundee United is the favourites. Of course they are. However, I don't think it's impossible for Raith to get something or win. But now I'm thinking that this could potentially be extended to the rest of the season. So
Wow.
yes, Dun United are still the favourites for the league, but I don't think it's impossible for the Rovers to win it. I genuinely don't.
The best thing about it, Shaughan, was it's now become a meme. And it's the picture of you from us up at Montrose. I think it must have been about 2020 on a sort of hospitality day. And the picture's brilliant. It's you sort of like leaning back in a chair, a big daft grin on your face, pouring yourself a red wine. And you tweeted out, it was a quote tweeting a Jim Spence article where he mused. Jim Spence, I'm just asking questions. Where Jim Spence, like, managed to stop talking about the police and the GRR for once to actually talk about football. And he mused if Dundee United could win the league or go unbeaten the entire season. I found that very funny. I thought that was very, very funny.
It turns out that Dundee United cannot go the entire season unbeaten. Do you know the thing that was slightly disappointing for that? Somebody quote tweeted that and said, it's bad enough that Dundee United got beat today. However, the fact that I know that this Tory is celebrating makes it feel even worse. I was like, come on now, call me anything. A bellend, a wanker, a prick. A Tory? Fuck off.
Aye, listen, just for the avoidance of doubt, Shaughan was very upset about what happened at Ravenscraig, and ever since then, he has refused to vote for the Conservatives again. So just want that, and just a bit of context there for our listeners, just to let you know. But it's been well for the Rovers, Shaughan. Like, there's Sam Stanton signed a new 2-year deal, or certainly up until another 18-month agreement. Certainly, you must be pleased with that. I think anytime I've watched the Rovers, like on the TV, Stanton's look class, like a really good presence in the middle of the park.
Aye, so that's a start. I mean, there's a number of players who are out of contract in the summer, and the manager. So I'd like to think that maybe Murray is in contract talks. You've got Ross Mullen. I'd like to see him signed. I'd like to see Byrne signed up on a permanent deal in January if possible.
What's Easton's situation?
Well, Easton's out of contract in the summer as well. So I would imagine if I was Dylan Easton, I would want another crack at the Premiership.
Yeah.
Like we've spoken about before, the fact that he's essentially became full-time quite late in his career. So if he was given an offer, then surely he'll take it. I hope it's at Wraith Rovers in the Premiership. However, if somebody like, I don't know, like who is going to offer him? Like Dundee United maybe?
Livingston.
Offer him a deal? Livingston, no, I'm not entirely sure. St Johnstone. So you would imagine there will be Premiership clubs after Dillington, and rightly so. So whether Wraith can kind of top trump them, we'll find out. But fair play to Dillington. I mean, whatever happens to him, he thoroughly deserves it. He's been excellent.
Yeah, it's not really a career path you see all often where someone starts off he started with St Johnstone's career, never really made it, but then went in part-time football and work your way all the way up to the Premiership. I think we were talking about it in the Terrace podcast group chat, and the only player who came up was Alan Lithgow, who's had quite a strange career. Obviously, was at Hearts as a youth player, left there in fairly murky circumstances, and signed for Clyde. Of course, he bloody did. And then was obviously excellent at Clyde in a terrible Clyde team, and then sort of just worked his way through part-time football till he goes to Livingston and ends up playing the top flight with them there. So who knows?
I mean, let's face it, he's 29, so this will be his last chance. He's not going to get another Premiership offer after this, you would imagine. So if Wraith can match it, he's enjoying his football, he stays local, I think he stays in Dunfermline.
Yeah.
So he would certainly be tempted by whatever Wraith put in front of him, but if he gets something from, I don't know, Dundee, for example, then fair play, why wouldn't you take it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're being realistic about it as well. There's some people like, why would you want to leave? He's playing great football. Just now everyone loves him. It's like, because Dundee United could probably pay him more money. So it's as simple as that. But before we move on to Dundee United, Shaughan, I'm going to ask you one question. Are Wraith Rovers going to win the division?
Yes.
Amazing. I mean, we'll move on and talk about United. I'm just wondering, I've got to sound like Charlie Nicholas. I'm just sitting here thinking. But I'm wondering if there's perhaps now a bit of pressure on Jim Goodwin. And I say this because he came into the club. I was looking at his time at Dundee United. Obviously, came into the club in March earlier in the year. Perhaps still time to save the season, but I think the rot had well and truly set in by this point. Like Mark Birighitti was never going to get it better. Like players like Charlie Mulgrew was just like a massive disappointment, like really poor at United. So the rot had set in by this point. I think it had been difficult to try and turn that around. But this season, you come in, you lose in the League Cup, you lose to the Spartans. Their first game was an SPFL side. You get turned over at Ainsley Park. You get knocked out of the group stages, but then that's very much in the rear view mirror because you start doing so well in the league. But then you get knocked out of the Challenge Cup by Falkirk. Now, the Challenge Cup isn't like, there's obviously fairly low on Dundee United's list of priorities, but nevertheless, they'd have been favourites to win that competition.
Mm-hmm.
And the next week, in fact, I think the same week actually, you get knocked out the Scottish Cup by Queen of the South on penalties. Probably under most circumstances, United would have won that game. I think Queen of the South have really rode their luck. But nevertheless, you still got knocked out of the competition. And now you're trailing in the league. Where it's like, regardless, you win all the rest of your games, you're still 2 points behind. If teams both keep on winning, you're still going to be 2 points behind. So I just kind of wonder if, when it comes to these big games, if Goodwin's really the right man to be there. Obviously the players will need to take responsibility as well, but he's the one that picks them, sets them up, signed them, etc.
I think there's pressure now, certainly. I mean, you're right in terms of what you're saying. I mean, even if you go back a wee bit further, so they lost to Falkirk, and you're right. I mean, how much kind of emphasis are they putting on the Challenge Cup? I would say none.
But I looked at the team, Shaughan. I looked at that team.
It was strong. It was a strong team.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, they must have rested a couple of players. But I looked at that earlier today and thinking, no, that's a good side they put out there.
So lost to Falkirk, they lost to Queen of South, and you're right. Another day they would have won that. They dropped points to Inverness, which kind of maybe didn't quite get as much attention. They kind of squeaked past there, like 1-0, but it wasn't a great performance. They've now lost to Wraith. I would expect them to beat Queen's Park on Friday night. Then they have a more difficult game, I suppose, against Partick Thistle the week after. But then by the same token, I said they would struggle against Partick Thistle the last time they played them. And I think they put 5 past them. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that they aren't playing well at the moment. They're certainly not sweeping teams aside. They're only in terms of forward, like they have Louis Moult, and we spoke about Tony Watt at the start of the season. We didn't necessarily fancy him to be a kind of line leader, I suppose. It feels like you need somebody else in January, and if you can do that, if they can extend their budget a wee bit more to bring in a forward, I think that will help them immensely. But I wouldn't say that everything feels great at this moment in time for United.
Well, one final thing, Shaughan, there were a lot of comments in the build-up to this game. A lot of the Scottish football big brains seemed unhappy that this match wasn't on the television. And you know the guys I'm talking about. You're talking about your SPFL Media Watch, your Improving Scottish Footballs, your Scottish Sports Marketing, your big brains. Guys that, the type, bad hairlines, very softly spoken, mostly wear glasses or contact lenses in some instances. I mean, I would have wanted to watch this game. Like I would have wanted to see it on the Friday night, but I appreciate that I think it was Amy Canavan in our Terrace podcast group chat. Obviously, she works with the BBC. She was able to put it in context that these games are picked well in advance. Yeah. And there's probably maybe a correct school of thought. Obviously, that's that degree of ambiguity now. A school of thought where there's games being saved up at Tannadice because there was a thing that United were going to win the league. So all these games are planned out in advance. I think last season, when you had Queen's Park versus Dundee at Oakville View, that was by luck that they alighted in that one. That was a title game. You're only allowed 2 games a season there. So I can understand it from a logistical point of view, from a rules point of view, and so on. I was disappointed that I couldn't watch it because I 100% wanted to see it. However, I also appreciate that football isn't a television show. It's not that it shouldn't be there to cater to a bunch of people that have no real vested interest, just want a game on the telly. And I'm more delighted. I didn't get to see it, sure, but you got to go there with thousands of other people, your mates, all wearing blue hats on a Saturday, and that's more important. And I think that the way some of these guys talk, it's like they've never been to a live game before. They don't know what it feels like, and that's not. I mean, obviously they have, but just the way they talk, it just like they're too big brains to actually to have any heart in it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it just feels like that's what I felt like. I would have wanted to see it. Yes, can understand why it wasn't a television. yes, I'm pleased that you got to go there and see it with your mates and it was special for you. Delighted for that. Delighted for that.
And by the same token, I was like, oh, I wonder if Falkirk Hamilton's on at 5:30 again on BBC Alba, because I would have watched it. But at the same time, like, I want to go to games at 3:00 on a Saturday.
Yeah, of course.
And I go every week, and I want to go to games at 3:00 on a Saturday. I don't want to go to games at 12:30. I don't want to get. Ideally, I don't really want to go to games on a Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not entirely sure why. And I know people are saying, "Oh, this is a big game. I want to watch it." Why are we being disadvantaged by the fact that the game has to take place at 3:00 on a Saturday? Right, but by the same token, bring it back to me. Why would I be disadvantaged by having to go to their game on a Friday night, or at 12:30 on a Saturday, or at 12:30 on a Sunday, or whatever the alternative would be? There were empty seats there. See, if you want to see it, go along and watch it. You absolutely could. So no, that kind of narrative was annoying me on Saturday as well, about the fact that it wasn't on television. Just, like, see if the part of the reason the game was so good, part of the reason that the day was so good, was because the attendance was so strong.
Of course.
And if see if it being a Friday night or a Saturday morning or Sunday or whatever, you could probably take, 1,000 off the attendance.
Definitely, and I think that, we're going to talk about it for our League One game, that's between the Accies and Falkirk. You look at behind the goal, Falkirk they sold at their allocation about 2,000 people there. If that had been a 5:30 kickoff, would they have sold out? Maybe, because Falkirk, that's one thing you've got to give their fans a lot of credit, is no matter how bad the team is, they will still go and support the team. But when you're watching those highlights and you see Falkirk scoring Calvin Miller's goal, bloody hell, like an amazing goal like that, and that whole stand bouncing and people in celebration, that's great, and that's great. I appreciate there's a product to be sold and all that, but I just think that sometimes people they just can't. They're too big picture. They're just some of these people are too, and it annoys me, and I don't know why it annoys me, because it shouldn't, because it's just people with subscriptions for Twitter accounts, but it annoys me, and it just feels like you don't go to games. It feels like you don't go to games. You don't have the heart and to appreciate what it's like to be there on a Saturday, the build up to a game where you wake up and that's the thing right smack bang in the middle of your day. I'm going to the football, and everything's built around that. Not like, oh, I'm working earlier on a Friday night, then I've got to get to the football. Or, oh, it's really early doors, so I've got to get there straight. The fact that you can plan your whole day, and that is the centerpiece, that is the flagship event of the day. That's a good feeling. And these guys, I don't think they get that.
I think we need to encourage as many people as possible to go to games.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, for me, that's the most important thing in Scottish football, because Scottish football, unlike most countries, is reliant on people coming through the door. So we need to encourage as many people as possible to go through turnstiles and watch games. And if we're putting it on a Friday night or a 12:30 on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever, then we are discouraging people from going through the turnstiles. So that ultimately doesn't feel right to me. And I understand people being disappointed that they can't watch it. Of course, I get that. But by the same token, I was like, oh, I'd love to watch Hamilton Falkirk on Saturday night, but I couldn't, because it was 3:00 on a Saturday. And if I was a Hamilton fan or a Falkirk fan, that's exactly when I would want to watch it. So
exactly.
So fine.
Exactly. So that dovetails us very nicely. We've already set the scene a wee bit. This is our League One feature match. Hamilton Academical 1, Falkirk 3. Wasn't quite as seismic as that game at the top of the Championship, but it's a massive game in the third tier. I think this will be vital in determining where the title goes. The Bairns came out on top here. Cal Morrison opened the scoring from the penalty spot. Lewis Smith pulled the Accies level shortly afterwards, but then Calvin Miller put Falkirk back ahead quickly afterwards, and Morrison put the game beyond doubt with about 11 or so minutes remaining. Falkirk are now back at the top of the table, 3 points ahead of Accies, but crucially, they've played one game less, and they're now the only unbeaten side left in the SPFL. I mean, the last meet between the sides, that was a dismal 0-0 draw in Grangemouth. This was a far tastier affair, and certainly going by the highlights, good highlights package as always from Falkirk TV, seemed pretty one-sided. I think Falkirk looked very, very deserved winners here.
Do you know what I think is I was thinking was a reasonably good comparison? Remember last season where like Dunfermline just had the bit between their teeth, and there was something about them between the management team and the players and the fans. And yes, there was a wee spell where Falkirk, it felt like they were reeling them in, and then they had a very one-sided game at East End Park.
Yeah, the one in March, that was that was a league decider.
It kind of felt like it was a wee bit like this in terms of, Hamilton have done very well this season, like far better than I expected them to. However, that travelling support, the kind of unity that there is between the fans, the kind of management team and John McGuigan, the players, and it looked like a reasonably one-sided game. Like that felt like a statement. And on top of that, it wasn't just the 3 points. It was injuries that Hamilton racked up. So Ryan Fulton went off. Lee Kildare was injured. Scott Martin was injured. That might be Hamilton's 3 best players. I don't know how long the 3 of them are going to be out, but ultimately I think there'll be that felt like serious ramifications in terms of Hamilton's ability to claw this deficit back.
Yeah, it felt as though Hamilton's best chances came from set pieces.
Yeah.
Their goal came from like a really terrible piece of goalkeeping from Nicky Hogarth. They are really indecisive there. But as bad as they were, and as bad as things could be for them with the 3 best players out injured, it's like with Falkirk, it just showed you how important that attacking trident is to how they play, because you had Ross McKeever up front. He played a massive part in, I think it was Miller's goal. He wins the flick on to set up Miller. And then there's Callum Morrison getting 2 goals. Calvin Miller scores 1. Calvin Miller sets up 1. Aidan Nisbet wins the penalty through a handball. So those 4 players all played a massive part in that. And on top of that, they defended, other than the goal, defended very well. I think Tom Lang, Cole Donaldson looked like they had good games. Brad Spencer continues to be such an important player for Falkirk, and it just feels like that was it was a game where everything seemed to go right for Falkirk and nothing seemed to go right for Hamilton, and it could be that sliding doors moment similar to that game in March last season. This feels like a big one even at this stage of the season.
Yeah, because I thought that Hamilton could have given them a game on Saturday, and maybe in different circumstances, if those players hadn't went off injured, maybe it would have turned it differently. However, based on the highlights, based on everything I've kind of read as well, it felt quite one-sided. And I think Falkirk probably, in terms of the times of the goals, so the goal 1-0 up, and then Hamilton equalised, whatever it was, maybe
28. All the goals, the first 3 goals were scored in about a 10-minute spell.
Yeah, so I think they equalised in the 28th minute.
Yep.
And then at that point, it's like, right, well, are Hamilton now going to get a foothold in the game? No, because Hamilton scored in the 32nd minute. So suddenly, like, again, momentum swings. And then they, like John Rankin, who I'm not entirely sold on, to be fair, he made a kind of wealth of substitutions. And then for the last 10 minutes, I suppose if you're a Falkirk fan, you're starting to worry about the fact that it's 2-1. Things are start getting a wee bit kind of worrying here. But then Falkirk made it 3-1 with 10 minutes to go. So in terms of the timings of the goals, it was ideal as well. And Nicky Hogarth, as much as he was at fault for the equaliser, like his kickings is ridiculous. So see for the goal that put Falkirk 2-1, his goal kick must have went 3/4 of the length of the park, which eventually, like, I think Stephen Henry had a pretty poor header, but then you're right, like McKeever had a very good flick on, and Miller's finish. I mean, Miller has been so important to them. Of the 3 players they signed at roughly the same day, in terms of Tom Lang, Brad Spencer, and Calvin Miller, all of them have been excellent.
Yeah.
I think arguably Miller has been the one that's been maybe the best of the 3.
I don't know, man. I think it's very difficult to put your finger on who's been the best, because they've all brought so much to that team. You know, like Tom Lang, just a big strapping meat and potatoes defender, something that they haven't had for a while. Like Brad Spencer, someone that's control in the middle of the park, can tackle, someone who can get the ball forward, someone who can chip in with the odd goal from time to time. They haven't had that for a long time. And then Miller's just, I think they have had, like, I think Callum Morrison is a really good player. It's just consistency's been his big thing. That's why he's playing for Falkirk ultimately. I think that like players in Scotland, and I'm talking like players in the SPFL, there are guys who play for like Elgin and Forfar and Clyde who on their day could play for Premiership clubs, could play in the top, but just their day doesn't come around often enough, and that's why you're playing further down the food chain. It's like Morrison's day. Like Morrison's a very, very talented player. He's got the talent to play at that level. His day just doesn't come around often enough, and that's why he's playing at Falkirk. However, his day seems to be coming around fairly frequently this season. And you're seeing that with the goals. I mean, like, just not to skip ahead, but the confidence he showed for that third goal. And, Kyle McDonald got himself in a bit of a fankle. Like, I think he was about to cut out Miller's pass and seemed to stumble and let Morrison in. But the fact that he just needs one touch to steady it, then shoots from the edge of the area, so confident that ball's going to go in. That's really impressive.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the summer, because I think he's excellent, and I think his contract's up in the summer. The fact that you would now expect Falkirk to win that league and get promoted to the championship, they absolutely will be offering him a new deal. But I do suspect that there'll be teams in the Premiership that would fancy Morrison signing for them in the summer. So be interested to see what happens to him.
So imagine if you're Dundee, you can expect to sign Dylan Easton and Callum Morrison at some point. I got to say, man, like I was a bit disappointed. Falkirk TV, very good highlights. They missed Miller's goal. You know how it cuts off. It seemed to cut off. The camera doesn't like pan around to catch it. However, Hamilton Accies have uploaded the entire game to YouTube. Somebody posted them on Pie and Bovril, and they said, like, basically, just skip to this time. It's like 1 hour, 1 minute to watch it. Holy fuck, by the way. I think it's a Pixelot camera. It's the only time I've actually enjoyed watching Pixelot highlights. But the goal, the finish is superb. Like, he gets the flicking from McKeever, one touch, and just, it's like there's no way Fulton saving that. Such a well hit shot. And because that camera is quite like far away, you can really see the Falkirk fans behind the goal absolutely bouncing. Brilliant scenes.
You're right, it was disappointing, but in terms of the away supports, I suppose similar to the experience that Rovers fans had on Saturday, the fact that Falkirk were able to sell out the away end, and every time the camera panned to them, certainly in terms of the celebrations for the goals, like, I don't know what it is about running downstairs when your team scored a goal. Like, that just looks good, but the fact that the stand is kind of up in the air, or that's how it looks, it almost felt unsafe, or looked a bit unsafe, but also looked like a really good laugh.
Do you remember, Shaughan? I think it might have been at East End Park, in the Norrie McCarthy stand. There was a video, this is about 10 years ago, somebody scored a goal and there's a guy running down the stairs holding a toddler's hand. Do you know the video I'm talking about? And he sprints down dragging this bairn behind him to celebrate. Do you know the video I'm talking about? Yeah.
But just, I would imagine if I was, bearing in mind like the kind of situation that Falkirk have found themselves in for the last, whatever it is, 7 years.
5 years they've been.
I mean, that must be their best away day for a long, long time. But it looked class to be a part of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've said, not to give Falkirk fans too much credit, but they always turn out for their team. They always turn out for the team, and there are supporters who are sort of teams who have got a very latent support, who will like sort of come and go depending on the team's fortunes. But Falkirk will always they'll always turn out in their thousands, and they'll do it even if it's especially when they're doing well. They've got a big support, and that's something that the team should be impressed with. They've bulked up the numbers, Shaughan. They've taken advantage of Edinburgh City's misfortune. They signed Ryan Shanley. He's one of several players that have left the capital's sinking club. I think they've yet to actually put a statement out to say what's going on. I think I read in Pie and Bovril that might be happening tonight, Wednesday the 20th of December. But I mean, you've had Danny Handling's gone to Brechin City, Callum Crane's just signed for Stirling Albion, Lee Hamilton's joined Clyde, and there's Ryan Shanley gone to Falkirk. What do you think that he can add to the Bairns?
I think he will be a decent sign. It was interesting in terms of looking at comments saying, oh, if he can screw them up, he should be a good signing for Falkirk. So maybe Edinburgh fans, well, presumably Edinburgh fans, know a lot more about him than I do. I think that he is a kind of all-action forward. Maybe what they expected from Jordan Allen but didn't quite get, they will get from Ryan Shanley. And they probably need somebody who, I mean, let's face it, McKeever, like McGlynn will play one up front. So McKeever is plan A. So if Shanley is happy to be plan B, then I think they'll be absolutely fine with that. I mean, McKeever showed you exactly what he can bring to a game. Like, goal scoring wise, that's kind of dropped off a bit, but he's still winning everything in the air.
He's so important to how Falkirk, even if he's not scoring, the three players that are in behind him will score.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think that, unfortunately, I don't think Jordan Allen is a particularly great plan B. I think Ryan Shanley will be a far better plan B, and maybe more similar to McKeever, but maybe a greater goal scoring emphasis than Allen would bring to the team. I think it was a decent signing.
Yeah, it's always a difficult thing if you've got if you play like one up top. It's very, very difficult to bring, especially who is doing so well this season. It's very difficult to try and sell it to a player. Do you want to come in and play second fiddle to this guy? You might get 10 minutes from time to time, but you're very much like plan B. And I think that Falkirk have got the carrot of full-time football. Maybe that was what they used to entice Jordan Allen in. Hasn't necessarily worked. Paid money to sign him as well, which that's baffling. I can actually see him going on loan to Clyde. Actually, I think that's where that's just a pure guess. I can see him going on loan to Clyde for the end of the season. But yeah, Shanley did well in a fairly middling Edinburgh side, so I think he could do well for a Falkirk team where everyone really seems to be enjoying themselves. You mentioned Hamilton. You said you were surprised by their season overall. I mean, they've gone into this match. They were ahead on Falkirk in goal difference. Do you think that Falkirk being on top of the table, we're going to see any change of that between now and the end of the season?
I think it might be a struggle. So you look at certainly Falkirk's next few games. So they have Annan, I think, away. You'd expect them to beat them. Then I think they have 3 home games in a row in terms of league. So there might be something along the lines of Stirling Albion, Queen of the South, and then Cove. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but certainly those 3 teams.
Cove's their game in hand, isn't it? That was during the snow. They couldn't get the pitch, or Cove couldn't travel down, something like that.
Something along the line, and then they might play Edinburgh. So that's their next 5 games. So you wouldn't put it beyond Falkirk to win the next 5, which means you probably need Falkirk to win the vast majority of their games coming up, and then even in the kind of 2 games that they face each other going forward, you would imagine that that Hamilton might need to take 4 points for those 6. It's just I would now be very surprised if Hamilton win this league. I think they'll probably have to settle for second. It just based on this 90 minutes, if you want to base it on 90 minutes, Falkirk looked far, far superior.
I think it's probably important to say that Falkirk could only sign Ryan Shanley through this, like the Falkirk Supporters Society, the FSS. They are, I think it's somebody will need to who knows what's going on better than me. But I think it's effectively like a basically subscription service for fans where you pay in money and so on, and the club have used that money to effectively pay for Shanley's wages. I always feel there comes with a greater degree of pressure with that for the club to get it right, because it's not like your money, it's like the fans' money. Ultimately, it's all the fans' money, like season tickets and all that. But when it's this sort of ring fence money that supporters have gone above and beyond to contribute, I do think there's more pressure to get it right. But nevertheless, Falkirk are able to augment their squad using donations from the FSS. You can't imagine Hamilton being able to go out and strengthen their squad to the same degree. I mean, not to get into crowd wanking and all that, but it's like you looked at the away stand at New Douglas Park and you looked at the home stand, and I would just purely by looking at watching the highlights, I think there were more fans in the away end than there were over the home end.
Far more. I mean, I don't know what the away end holds at Hamilton, but
2,000. I'm going to assume 2,000, given they sold out their allocation for it.
Well, then I'm amazed that the entire attendance was 3,800, because it didn't look like that Hamilton had 1,800 there.
No,
so you're right. I think where Hamilton have very much benefited this season is the fact they have a new owner, and he's clearly allowed them to sign new players. If he's still generous in January, then fine, he can maybe bring players in. But in terms of what they're bringing in through the turnstiles, I'd imagine they're at the limit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And just one final thing to say. I mean, we've complained about Sean Elderbrandt's commentary on Falkirk TV and saying that he's too good, that him being too good is ruining it. I actually want to turn that around. The fact that Falkirk are doing so well on the pitch at the moment and they look like they're going to win the title, I'd much rather hear him commentating on the games than the other guys previously.
Yes, no, very much so. I mean, if we do have to watch Falkirk win the league, then I would like to hear Sean Elderbrandt describing it.
Yeah, when Falkirk were losing, like when Falkirk lost 6-0 to Queen's Park at Firhill, I really enjoyed the Falkirk TV commentary from like Paul Sheeran's last game. It was when Mackenzie Lemon basically tripped over his own shoelaces.
When I watched that game, I watched it live, and there was my house next door was up for sale or was up for rent, and there was literally people viewing it as Airdrie were like going in 3, 4, 5-0 in front, and I was absolutely screaming at the top of my head. So I can only presume that I put off those renters from moving next door to me.
Now, before we go on to our third and final game from League Two, I just want it to be known that I'm watching The Curse of Humpty Dumpty on Amazon Prime. That's in the background here. I don't know if for our people who are watching on YouTube. There we go. I'm just going to tweak that around so Fowler's not done for copyright. It looks terrible. However, I'm probably going to watch this again when we're not recording, so I can make full benefit of it. It looks absurd.
How is the character of Humpty Dumpty being portrayed? I'm interested to hear that.
Oh, he's very malevolent. Very malevolent.
But is he an egg?
He's certainly oval shaped, yeah. But he's got a thing in his mouth. It's like an extra set of mandibles, almost like the Predator.
All right, okay. So it's literally a horror film.
Yeah, no, it's called The Curse of Humpty Dumpty. What do you think it's going to be a rom-com?
Well, I mean, I presumed it was a horror, but I just wanted to double check.
No, it's very much a horror. I think there's a woman who's writing loads of things in a notebook as well.
Right.
But listen, I'll report back. I'll watch it, and Sean, we'll record a second podcast to go. That'll be the bonus podcast for this evening. A review of The Curse of Humpty Dumpty. Oh, what's he done now, Humpty Dumpty? Oh, he's pulled himself together and just kicked someone in. Anyway, we're not here to talk about The Curse of Humpty Dumpty. We're here to talk about Forfar Athletic 2, Dumbarton 4. There was no top of the table clash taking place in League 2 this weekend, so we just went for the one with the most goals, and it took place at Station Park. This was a humdinger of a game, to be honest. Goals being traded all over the place. Jinky Hilton scored for the Suns, and then Josh Skelly scored for the Loons. There were 3 goals in 3 minutes at the end of the first half. Matty Shields scored for the Suns. Seb Ross scored from the Loons. Finlay Gray scored for the Suns. And then just now, Mark, Tony Wallace scored for the Suns. And that was all she wrote. An important victory for Dumbarton. They're still in third place, but they've kept pace with Stennismuir and Peterhead at the summit of the division. And a really tasty 3-horse race for that title is developing. And Forfar, meanwhile, just is not happening for them this season. 1 point from the last 4 matches. They're in 8th place, and it really feels like Raymond McKinnon, Mr. Raymond McKinnon, is hanging on by his fingernails here.
Aye, I mean, let's face it, there's 2 managers, I would say, in the SPFL this season where I have been amazed that they are still in situ, I suppose, at their clubs. Like, in fairness, like, the other one was Marvin Bartley. And every week I'm like, right, he must be away now. Didn't seem to happen. In fairness, he's Marvin Bartley's then probably giving him a wee bit of time. Maybe the January transfer window, so fair play. But Ray McKinnon, I mean, in terms of, has there been another club in the 4 divisions this season who have underperformed compared to where we expected them to be? Like we thought Queens, they would be
Queens have been the most disappointing pound for pound.
Okay, although in fairness, in the preview podcast, I said they would finish 8th. Bad.
Queen of the South.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant Queen's Park.
They've fuck. There's been, I'd say, maybe revise it, Sean. There have been a number of clubs that have been disappointed, but yes, Queen's Park, shit, really shit.
But in terms of Forfar, we thought that they would be challenging for promotion. They're now very much in the kind of relegation shake-up, and so every single week it brings a fresh defeat. And bear in mind, like the end of last season as well. Like as much as Ray McKinnon came in and moved them up the table. They kind of moved a wee bit back down. I know you don't want to necessarily include last season in terms of form, but this poor run of form has went on for a long, long time now. And I presumed when we said we would discuss this game, I was like, I think McKinnon will be away by the time we record the podcast. But here we are. He's still in place, and I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure I understand it.
I think if you want to get a grip of how Forfar fans are feeling, a lot of the time when to get fan sentiment, what we do is you read Pine Bov, you talk to people about the game. I mean, for instance, for a Dumbarton perspective, I was texting Fraser Clark earlier today after watching the goals for this game and just basically saying, like, I thought 3 of Dumbarton's 4 goals are 3 of the most aesthetically pleasing goals I've seen this season. Well, come on. I mean, even the corner, even the one that Tony Wallace scored from a corner is a lovely goal. But we'll come on and talk about them shortly. So I was texting him just for his thoughts in the game. I always really enjoy talking to Fraser about football. Really, really good guy. But it's like you read Pine Bottle, talk to supporters. I think all you need to do to understand how Forfar fans are feeling is just listen to these match highlights, because there are 3 times during this game where the fans are openly booing. They openly boo when Matty Shields puts Dumbarton in front. They boo at the half-time whistle. They boo when Tony Wallace puts them back up front. And there's a big boo right at the very end at the full-time whistle. And I think as well what they do at Forfar is that because... I was going to say, having been at Station Park a good few times, their gantry for the camera is right on the halfway line. And it's a really good service. I really like Forfar TV. I think it's good that you get a good feel for the game, and the replays are always really good and so on. But anytime there's bad language, straight away, kill the audio. The audio was killed a good number of times in these highlights. So I think it's fair to say that based on those alone, the booing, the fact that audio was killed for the bad language, Forfar fans are not happy. And we had them pegged. You're right, I suppose, actually, to the point you said earlier, from expectation to where they were, Forfar have been one of the most disappointing because you could say Queen of the South, nobody expected them to challenge for the title. You expected them to finish in the playoffs. Queen's Park, they're in a really bad season. Forfar, though, I expected them to be up there with Dumbarton and Steny at the title, miles off it. And then the fact that they're, I think it's 13 points behind the Spartans and 5 points ahead of Clyde in 10th place, miles off it.
It's funny you talk about what I presume is muting to delete out the swearing. I even think I've pinpointed which fan it is. There was a fan, I think when they go 2-1 down and they start shouting wakey wakey, it sounds like an old guy. They shout wakey wakey Forfar. I'm adamant he's the one that's dropping F-bombs and C-bombs that they've decided that they cannot possibly include. But this is just like a really, really, just a really, really fun game. And I think for a lot of it could have went either way. But as soon as Dumbarton got that 4th goal, that was when the game was sealed. Yeah. Like Forfar might have had a penalty at 3-2. And there's been I thought so. I mean, there's been a lot of games this season where Forfar have just been like clearly second best and just been dreadful. If you're Ray McKinnon, you might point to this one and say, well, there are some positives. But regardless, results-wise, they have been absolutely dreadful this season. I think they'll have enough to stay up. But I still don't. I'm still amazed that McKinnon is there essentially.
Yeah, I just it hasn't worked out. That's you say it has not worked out, and you think that from him coming in to the positive start that they had in the League Cup for about the first 7 months of the season, you're thinking that this team are really going to go places, to just completely falling off the face of the earth. I mean, I watched his post-match interview. He acknowledged like bad luck. He acknowledged that. The fact that, I mean, the first goal, who scored the first goal? Jinky Hilton's goal. Hilton was amazing as well. There's nothing to say. We'll talk about Forfar. We'll come on and talk about Dumbarton, because it's a very much a contrasting performance. Terrible bad luck. Like, I mean, there's James Hilton having a shot, and the thing like clatters off the inside of Thomas Brindley. It goes like inside between his legs, hits off the inside of his thigh, and deflects into the net. And McKinnon made the point, it was like, when you're down, you're down. I think he said it's the 3rd goal in as many games they've lost to a deflection taken away from Mark McCallum. That's bad luck. The penalty, I don't think it was. I don't think it was a penalty. I mean, it happens very quickly. But the ball's played into played over Aaron Linus's head to Josh Gellett. He's going in and goal. I think he anticipates Shaughan Crichton coming behind him. You can see the way he sort of changes his position. He sort of like braces his thighs for impact. And then Crichton sort of, when Crichton makes contact, and when I say makes contact with him, sort of like nudges into him, he goes down looking for it. Whereas I think he's just like banging out a confidence that a confident player tries to get the shot away. But Josh Kelly isn't confident at the moment, and that's why he goes looking for the penalty instead.
Bear in mind they already had a goal in this game, albeit
from the penalty spot,
albeit from the penalty spot. So I thought he got bars. I thought it was a foul from behind. But regardless, I know what McKinnon's saying in terms of if you're down at the bottom of the league, you don't get results, you don't get rub of the green. But that's just because if you're down at the bottom of the league, you spend far less time in the opponent's penalty area, and there's probably far more going on in your penalty area. So I don't think that comes down to luck. I think that comes down to them being poor.
I think as well, like the Dumbarton's second and third goals, really nice goals. The second goal beautifully worked. The third one, an amazing hit from Finlay Gray. But fuck me, look at the marking. The ball gets played. The ball gets played sort of to the penalty box, and there's Matty Shields coming in off the left. Lovely finish. Mm-hmm. Such a nice goal. Interplay between Hilton and Orsay down the right to set him up. Lovely goal, but a really bad goal at the same time. Yeah. And the Finlay Gray's goal, I had seen the goal already. I just watched it, and I know that he scored like from the edge of the area. But when the highlights are watching back the highlights, and again, you see they win a free kick just at the edge of the penalty box. He's standing about 30 yards for goal, 25 yards from goal, just himself. No one comes out to meet him. And when the ball, it's Hilton who just passes the ball to him. And I mean, it's a brilliant finish. You've got to say, an incredible finish. However, he shouldn't have been in the position to get the shot away. Yeah. Somebody should have been at the edge of the area to close him down. It's a really, really good goal, but it's like such an obvious goal to lose. And then the other goal as well, Tony Wallace's goal. Again, brilliant delivery in from Hilton. But he's like, Tony Wallace is one of the most... If you look at that Dumbarton team and you've got a corner, you've conceded a corner to them, who are the guys that are the biggest threats here? Shaughan Crichton, Tony Wallace. Why? Because they're fucking big boys. Mark them. They're the two guys the biggest threat. Then work everything else for there. They choose not to mark Tony Wallace. It's an easy header in. So you get bad luck with the shot deflecting off Brindley's legs. You get bad luck with a quote unquote penalty that wasn't given, but you give away 3 of your goals. But
the defeat in general isn't down to bad luck. I mean, the defeat in general is down to being inferior, and that's ultimately why Forfar are where they are in the division.
Yeah, and I think Andy Munro going off isn't great. That was I don't know how long he's going to be out for. And McKinnon acknowledged it's something that I don't know if we said it on the bonus show that we did last week, but about that Forfar need another striker. I think we're just talking about teams that need strikers. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Josh Skelly, I think it's been a bit of a hard shift for him. Up front himself, there's been a lack of competition, and they do need players that are going to come and augment them. I also think that Forfar have got the money to bring in recruits and reinforcements in January, but whether or not that people want to go, are you going to get a high caliber of player to go there for a team that are struggling at the moment? I don't know. I look at League 2 at the moment, and I don't know what you think, but it feels like I think that we know. It's a 3-horse race at the top of the division. Spartans will finish in 4th place. Elgin City will finish bottom. That's how it feels to me. And already at this stage of the season, that Forfar are just like too far away because you're being say 13 points. You're expecting. I don't know if the Spartans can keep up their good run. I think they can. I've not seen any evidence to suggest that they're going to fall away. It's not like Bonnyrigg last season, who made a really, really impressive start. Very quickly they fell away. I think it was after 3. They got 7 points in the first 3 games and fell away. Spartans, I think, can go the distance, but it just feels like such a huge missed opportunity for them. And I think it's just already at this season, it's just like not finishing 10th.
And like so many other signings in the summer, where young players either on loan from Dundee United or young players who have been, I suppose, let go from the Dundee clubs, and none of that's really worked out. So and you wonder how they could do it differently in January in terms of Because again, you probably think it's going to be, unless they really do have money to spend, it's probably going to be loan moves again. And again, it's probably going to have to be young players. So I don't know how they get themselves out of this funk. I don't fancy them to particularly get out of it, but I do think they will keep their head above water, but not because I think they'll necessarily improve, but just because they have a wee bit more than Elgin, ultimately.
Do you think McKinnon will last the season?
No. I can't imagine A, how he'll manage that, or B, he will manage that.
Yeah, I'm the same. And it's a shame. I'll say it's a shame. I mean, I've no real skin in the game, but McKinnon's just had a funny managerial career, because there's places where he's done really well. Queen's Park, for instance, I know the circumstances were very favourable towards him there, but like did a good job at Queen's Park. Wraith Rovers, probably say on the whole. Dundee United, maybe a wee bit unlucky. The club was in a bit of a tricky position.
So probably the sliding doors moment with McKinnon was, if I remember correctly, was Simon Murray sent off undeservedly in the playoffs. Dundee United against Hamilton, he got sent off. He got a second yellow card for diving, and it probably should have been a penalty. That was probably sliding doors moment, because certainly when he left Wraith, I rated him as a manager, and I thought he'd probably have a decent career, but it feels like it's been Queen's Park tenure aside, and let's face it, he had money to spend there. It feels like it's been all downhill, and let's face it, you're wondering where he goes next. I doubt it's SPFL bound if Morton let him go. If Forfar let him go, sorry.
Yeah, I just, he felt like at the time the best manager that Falkirk, like I said about his time at Falkirk, the better. It feels like that he was the best manager that Forfar could have got in the circumstances, and for a while it looked like that to be the case. It's not working, and fans, well, like we say, you don't need to. You don't need to be able to read to understand that fans aren't having it. But I suppose that as bad as Forfar were, Dumbarton were able to. Oh, in fact, you know what we haven't mentioned, just before we go on? How good was Seb Ross's goal?
Oh, really good. Absolutely class.
See, if you haven't seen it, listener, please go and get a look at it. One of the good things about the Forfar highlights is there's a camera behind the goal. I mean, he gets the ball like sort of like flicked into him. He controls it on his knee. He flicks it over the head of Aaron Linus. He takes a touch, and then he finishes. It's like Dennis Bergkamp's goal against Argentina at the 1998 World Cup, but with one extra touch and at slightly lower stakes.
I mean, it's nothing like it, but it's very good. So, as much as it's nothing like that goal, I would encourage you to watch it, because it's very, very good.
The control in his knee, I think it's a beautiful goal. I think it's one of the goals of the season. I think it's actually the best goal that was scored. I think it was the best goal that was scored in that game.
Definitely. And there were some good goals in that game, but that was very much the best one.
And I suppose we'll come and talk about from the Martin's perspective. I think this is a really big win for them, for having lost last week to Stennismuir. The circumstance, an 85th minute winner, a deflected 85th minute winner at that, where you see the rivals pull like further ahead of you in the table. Really important that they went to Forfar and won to maintain the pace, and they managed to do that. And I think some of the football they played at times was just really, really good. And I think that it all really came down to the performance of Jinky Hilton, who, like, a goal, 2 assists, a secondary assist, just a general menace all afternoon.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good. And as much as I've always been a wee bit wary of Stevie Farrell as a Dumbarton manager, and let's face it, like, the Barton fans have never really been totally sold on him. But see, in terms of this season and in general, I do feel a bit sorry for him, because they're a wee bit behind Stennismuir. But I don't think that's because Dumbarton are doing poorly. It's because Stenny are doing so well. What is that, 7 wins in a row?
7 wins in the bounce.
And what is that, 8? They're like maybe 8 points behind Stenny. And I do think that, like, last week, as much as Stenny probably deserved the 3 points, there was a couple of moments where Dumbarton might have kind of got their noses in front. So on another day, that could have went differently. But I do think that Farrell has Dumbarton playing. I think going forward, they've got players that can hurt teams. And again, it felt like there was 3 or 4 players who had a very, very good game on Saturday, and eventually they overran Forfar. However, I'm still not entirely sure they're going to be able to get out of this division, and ultimately that's what Farrell has been tasked with.
Aye, with Farrell, I think that the problem with him is you just as a Dumbarton fan, I just don't think you can trust him. I think that's it. It's like since he's been there, he's lost the big games, relegated via the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Last season almost went the distance for Stirling Albion. A horrendous second half to the season. Signed a new contract, finished in second place. Play Annan, get stuffed off Annan. Big game against Steny, really important game for them to close the gap at the top of the table. They lose it, and you can say there's a bit of luck that's involved. Farrell's the common denominator. That's the thing. Farrell's the common denominator there. So that's why. But reading on Pie and Bovril, it's like that's what the fans and all the fans that I speak to, I've spoken to Dumbarton, have said that it's just that you can't fully believe in him.
And we were both very surprised when he was given that contract extension when Dumbarton were doing very well towards the kind of start of last season, or maybe it was the kind of midpoint of last season when he was given that contract extension. We were both very surprised at that. I suppose what you would say is, let's say worst case scenario, Dumbarton do end up in the playoffs. You would imagine that Edinburgh finished 10th from League One. You would then imagine that maybe Annan, for example, might finish 9th.
You'd fancy I
would still fancy Dumbarton against Annan. So as much as it stands right now, I'm not entirely sure they're going to win League Two. You would make Steny the favourites. I still think they have a pretty good chance of getting promoted. And ultimately, if he does that, then that's what he's been tasked with. So fair enough.
That's it. It comes to the big game against Annan. Imagine Annan, terrible season, lost 6
games. 5-0 defeat.
5-0 defeat at Gallabag, that's it. And a stuffy 1-1 draw back at the Rock for a wee bit of pride. A couple of observations. This was, I think it was Harry Brown's first league appearance of the season. He has come in place of Brett Long, who broke his ankle. And it's a horrendous, it's just a freak training ground accident. But he's going to be out for the rest of the season, which is a damn shame because I think he's one of the best goalkeepers in the division. And just an all-round good player. One of the good things, though, is that Harry Brown's not your typical lower league backup goalkeeper. Yeah. And what I mean by that is normally at this level, you have got your undisputed number one goalkeeper, and then the drop-off between your number one and number two is enormous. So your number two is normally someone who's about 20 years old, who's about 5'8", and who will only ever play low maintenance, very quietly gets on with his work, very low maintenance, but only ever plays if your goalkeeper goes off injured or he's sent off. Your guy comes on, plays the last 20 minutes or so, straight away, even before the final whistle, you're on the phone to Hibs. You got any goalies you can loan me? Dundee United, you got any keepers you can get a shot of? Harry Brown's not like that. I think the gap between Brown and Long is a lot narrower than most other goalkeepers. And so it's a drop-off in quality, not a massive drop-off in quality, however. So that's good. I think it was like most other keepers in the division. Your number one gets injured, you're in a bit of bother. But so they're fortunate in that regard.
I totally agree. It does hamper them because I think Brett Long is arguably, no, he wasn't because your keeper Jameson's the best goalie in the division. Brett Long's very good though. I think Brown is decent. I've seen him against Raith Rovers and I was very impressed by him. But there is a gap there, and it certainly doesn't improve Dumbarton's chances of winning the division, put it that way.
I think as well an observation that I had, they need Mark Durnan back because Aaron Linus is not a centre-back. I think that we saw that for Forfar's goal. It came from the penalty. Linus gave away the penalty, but that's not necessarily what I'm criticising for because the foul, it doesn't matter where he's playing in the park. Anyone could have made that foul. It's the fact that it's a ball chucked into the box and he doesn't properly deal with it. The ball just gets headed up into the air and then it's allowed to skitter around a bit before they can clear. And I think having Durnan and Crichton in there, that just brings a lot more assurance. So when Dennis Muir played Dumbarton last week, that's when the ball went to Matty Aitken up top, that's the player he looked to peel off onto. It wasn't Sean Crichton, because I think he knows that Crichton would give him a much harder time. It was Aaron Linus, who's a bit shorter, isn't quite as strong, probably a better football player, but he's a fullback. He's a fullback that's having to play in one just because of injuries. So I think they could do with him back. Other than that, I don't think there's really much to complain about for Dumbarton at all in that game. I think that 4-2, judging by the chances that were missed at the end, 4-2 might actually have flattered Forfar, because when Dumbarton got into their groove, Like they looked really good. Mentioned it there that the goal we've not even touched on Tony Wallace's goal. And what makes it so good? See Hilton's corner. It's so. It's it's like an airplane flying through the sky where it's just so straight and undulating. It's so flat and like that's just such a nice. I mean, the marking's poor and somebody should have got a bit tighter to Wallace, but it's just such a nice goal, man. Such a nice goal. And they could have won by more, and it was an important win for them. And it keeps pace with themselves and Peterhead. Big game coming up. I think it's on the 6th of January. Where the match between Peterhead and Dumbarton is going to be rearranged. So that feels like a real 6-pointer in the battle there. Because I think if Dumbarton lose that one, I mean, they're still the same number of points behind Stennismere at the top of the table. It doesn't really change much, but I think psychologically it just nudges Peterhead away from them. But
that's a battle for second, though, isn't it?
Yes, but I still think Dumbarton will see themselves legitimate title contenders. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a 3-horse race at the moment, but one that Stennismere are certainly the favourites for the time being.
That's good. You're keeping your feet on the ground. I'm glad you're not getting carried away.
I mean, I didn't really want to talk about Stenny because we talk about Stenny.
No, that's fine.
We talk about Stenny all the time. I think that I'm trying to get Craig Fowler to do a Stenhousemuir special podcast. And where we go and look in depth purely at Stennismere. Some wag might say, "Hey, that's every fucking lower league podcast." No, but when we just specifically look at Stennismere, not Stennismere and Wraith Rovers, just Stenhousemuir. So we'll maybe look forward to that at some time. But Shaughan, I think we've set out what we've achieved to do. We wanted to talk about 3 lower league games in great depth, and we've given the people what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And an hour and 24 minutes, unless Fowler decides to edit bits out. I don't know. I wouldn't imagine so.
I hope he does. The bit at the start, obviously, and the bit where my Amazon package got delivered. So there's 2 bits he needs to edit out there.
That takes it down to an hour and 19. But that's long enough, isn't it?
Yeah, long enough. That's Craig Fowler's problem. But nevertheless, dear listener, thank you so much for joining myself and Shaughan, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast. Shaughan and I were not recording a Patreon episode this evening, but it doesn't matter because there's hours of good stuff in there. I think Fowler's doing what fans want from Christmas.
Sounds great.
Some people want to end world hunger. Some people want a new centre forward. That's the mindset of a football fan. But no, please. There's going to be. Don't, Shaughan. I think this is probably the last podcast we're going to record in 2023 because I don't want to record one next week. I don't have to sit down and research games of football when I could be out having pints instead.
Even if it's Stennismere based.
I know, unless it's Stennismere based, I'll do that because I don't need to research that. It's all up here. So if you want me to talk about, I don't know, like Clyde versus whoever they're playing, I'll need to sit down and with a pen and paper for that. But nevertheless, that's very much my problem. So I'd say enjoy your football, enjoy your festive period. Don't worry about being respectful because it's Christmas. So you can pretty much do what you want. And somebody says, "Excuse me, have you just been sick in my clothes?" Oh, come on, it's Christmas. It's your gateway to basically be as debauched as possible. So just make the most of it, really.
I'm enjoying the thought of lower league football fans up and down the country behaving dreadfully just because you've told them not to be respectful.
Well, don't do anything too wild. Like don't assault anyone. Just.
There's a line somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Is over the line.
Maybe that's it. Like, go out and have a good time, but please do so respectfully. Maybe that's it. Yeah. Like, just enjoy yourself. Be debauched, but do so respectfully. Be debauched, but be debauched respectfully. That's all we can ask.
Yeah, that's all we can ask. Fair play.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Shaughan.
No, thank you.
And thank you very much to you, the listener. Take care. Good night. God bless.